Hello and welcome to This Week at the Movies. I'm Matt,
I'm Eric.
and we are here to share our thoughts on a couple big streaming releases, the second of which are seemingly annual now, the last few years. Jennifer Lopez romantic comedy for the winter, which sparked Eric and I to each pick a Jennifer Lopez movie to look at that's decidedly not a romantic comedy. So you're welcome, America. If you're 49ers fans looking for a little bit of sadness after watching your team implode in the NFC Championship game, we might have some sad movie recommendations for you. But we are going to kick it off with the first one being the new Netflix comedy You People. This one was co-written by Jonah Hill, who's in the middle there with Eddie Murphy, and Kenya Barris, who created Blackish. And this one is about a couple who are from decidedly different worlds. Ezra, played by Hill, was born to a middle class Jewish family, but has kind of developed a love for hip hop and African American culture. Ends up hooking up with Amara, and her family are Muslims. Very much, her father very much into protecting his own community and heritage. Their parents are suddenly thrown together as they decide to get married, and some hilarity ensues, or at least that's the idea here. A lot of back and forth. You get Julia Louis-Dreyfus, David Duchovny are in the cast. Nia Long is also in the cast. I thought this one actually was pretty funny. Some back and forth, definitely some edgy, biting humor, some cultural commentary. If you've watched Blackish or seen some of the other things that Barris has done, that wouldn't be a surprise to you. His Netflix show that he did, which was loosely based on his own life, was kind of biting in that comedic style too. I liked the kind of back and forth between Jonah Hill and Eddie Murphy. I liked the awkward character played by Julia Louis-Dreyfus. This one worked for me. I know not everyone's loved it, but I'm giving it a solid thumbs up. Eric, how did you feel about You People?
I was mostly pleasantly surprised by having seen Eddie Murphy, which I haven't seen in a while, Julia Louis-Dreyfus, and then David Duchovny just sitting there in the background was kind of a delight. But the leads, Jonah Hill
You
and Lauren
forgot
London.
David Duchovny, the world's biggest exhibit fan, apparently.
Yeah, there you go. But yeah, the parallels between the two leads and their relationships with each other's parents. I appreciated that structure, and I like going back and forth between them. I wish I had seen a little more. There's sort of a stylistic approach to it. I really enjoyed the editing. There is a lot of I don't really know how to describe it, but there's a podcast vibe to it, and there's an interspliced continuing podcast that Jonah Hill's character Ezra is a member of, and they discuss, quote unquote, the culture and what it's like for different races to attempt to interact with each other and show some cultural appreciation. And I really felt like that was trying to be something more than it was. There's sort of a scene that I've seen in a lot of comedies where Eddie Murphy is sitting in the car and his character has a friend who is talking to him about the kid's podcast. And it's like, don't you remember when you were a kid and you got a little crazy too? And it was just odd that like this speech and this purposeful podcasting kind of amounted to just a moment I've seen in a lot of other movies. I gave it a thumbs up because I thought I really enjoyed this, and I thought the relationships worked. I thought most of the chemistry between the different actors worked on screen. The only other thing I would say is I had a little bit of an issue with how often Jonah Hill character is just, the comedy is that he's being dishonest with Eddie Murphy, and Eddie Murphy knows it. That joke, that bell kind of kept getting rung, and I got tired of hearing it after a little bit. But generally, yes.
Yeah, and I liked Hill and London too in their lead roles. It's really a lot about Hill and Eddie Murphy, and London and Julia Louis-Dreyfus, kind of the future daughter-in-law, mother-in-law, son-in-law, father-in-law, that kind of dynamic, which was a lot of fun. I will say one quibble I have is it felt like the ending was very abrupt. to the point where I'm like, if you're logically thinking it through, they've been apart for 3 months and they have an awkward, reunion on the sidewalk, and then here's your impromptu wedding. Right. Sure. Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. That was so that part felt a little bit rushed, but I genuinely liked kind of the back and forth. There was some hilarious too, like where Jonah Hill's wearing a red sweatshirt and he takes him to a crypt barbershop, and you're like, this is not going to end well.
Yeah, that small speech that he goes in on him about, like, what are you gonna do if you take it off? What are you gonna let him like run your life? And like, it just, yeah, that was enjoyable.
Yeah, they had some fun times together. So that one, obviously a romantic comedy, wedding themed. That was the theme this week, apparently. With the other major release for the week is Shotgun Wedding, which stars Jennifer Lopez and Josh Duhamel as a couple who are trying to have an exotic dream wedding on a remote island off the Philippines. Right there, you just know nothing good ever comes of going to these remote islands off of these unstable countries. And as you might expect, first, they have some problems. They have their own kind of parent issues. Jennifer Coolidge plays Duhamel's mother. She's a little wacky. Cheech Marin is Jennifer Lopez's father. He's a little judgmental about his future son-in-law. And then, of course, Lenny Kravitz arrives as Jennifer Lopez's former romantic partner, former fiance, who works with her father, just to throw a wrinkle. And when you think it's going to be just that kind of awkward, that's when the pirates land and take over the wedding. And pretty soon they have to try to shoot their way out. Eric, what did you think of Shotgun Wedding?
Well, I very much enjoyed it, but I didn't like laugh at it. This was a movie about relationships. Some of them more believable than others. And I think a lot of it is focused on marriage and struggles and complications and things not being perfect and not being able to be in control. And I think they did a good job of writing a story that was about that. But at the same time, that means you're watching something that is unfocused and imperfect and struggling a lot. And so, Jennifer Coolidge, I thought was great. Cheech Marin, I thought was there. And Jennifer Lopez and Josh Duhamel, like, I liked their chemistry. I wish they had done more with what they had. They're prepping after they've had their fight and they think they're going to call off the wedding and these pirates have taken over the wedding. There is a man with a gun who's coming and they're hiding in the shower and they're trying to decide which plan are they going to go with, throw a net over the guy or light him on fire. And they can't really decide and they can't agree. In my head, I'm telegraphing like, okay, so if they're going to find out that if they throw the net on him and they light it on fire, their teamwork, in this absurd, darkly comedic way is going to work for them. And that just didn't happen. It's not like something else clever happened. It just didn't happen. And yet what I expected was going to happen did end up happening because she does use this flamethrower. These things do happen a few beats later. It's just a little clunky. I would still give it a thumbs up. I think Jennifer Lopez is great. And yeah, I would say like there's no harm in giving it one thumb up. I think people are going to enjoy their time if they're going to go see this.
Yeah, I get what you're saying, though. This movie also is a little bit famous because originally Armie Hammer was cast here, and this was one of the projects that he early had to drop off. And I couldn't help sitting there thinking, I don't know what their chemistry would have been like watching, just watching this movie and the way it plays out. I think that would have been weird casting. So maybe his scandal did them a favor. I like Josh Duhamel here. He's fine. The movie's just okay. I'm never not going to love seeing D'Arcy Carden and the fun twist that they have with her character and what they give Lenny Kravitz to do. But you're right, there are a lot of things that are kind of telegraphed that you can see coming from a ways. Even that kind of finale, I could tell before they even started where that all was going. And there are some logic questions in there that never get answered. Like, Here's another movie that kind of abruptly ends with a wedding in a spot where you're like, I feel like they'd have some other concerns still that they needed to work out, but overall, it's fun. You're not really expecting this to be a movie that holds a lot of logic together. You're hoping for some good laughs, some fun sequences. So I gave it a mild thumbs up. I'll ask you, of the two of these movies, which one did you like better?
Oh, You People, hands down.
Yeah, I liked You People better as well. They were both fun. They were both interesting, but I thought You People was more clever. However, we didn't want to miss an opportunity with the Jennifer Lopez movie to look at some films out of her canon. So each of us have picked a movie, but probably not the Jennifer Lopez movie you're thinking of, because we think a lot about her doing romantic comedies. I made jokes about this same time last year. She gave us Marry Me, which was kind of a romantic comedy like the year before, I think in December-ish. Was I can't remember the name of the movie that actually ended up being a lot better than that. Second Chance. Um, she's done a lot of these movies, but in between, Eric and I actually both managed to pick some different kind of movies. The one that I went with is Hustlers. This movie came out in 2019, and if you watch the Netflix documentary last year, Halftime, it was really about the run up and the marketing of this movie and how much it seemed like Jennifer Lopez was going to get an Academy Award nomination. I personally think she should have gotten a nomination. She's very good in this movie as a best kind of supporting actress role. It's a different kind of role. It's much more dramatic. It's not a happy movie by any stretch of the imagination, but I really appreciated the okay, it's not lighthearted like her romantic comedy and stuff. But I really enjoy the work between her and Constance Wu and this cast. I thought some of the physical work that she did as a dancer in this was incredibly impressive. I mean, the same thing when you're looking at Shotgun Wedding. I remember my wife looking at me. She's like, "Isn't Jennifer Lopez 50?" And I was like, "Yep." Now I feel pretty bad about myself, but I think she gives a great performance, and she's probably one of those actors where you pin her into a certain type, and I think that kind of went against her getting a nomination here, but she was definitely Oscar worthy for me in Hustlers, a movie that I liked a lot more than I anticipated based on the trailer.
Yeah. I appreciate you recommending this because it's something that kind of flew under my radar in 2019. And getting the chance to sit back and watch this, I love Constance Wu. I think she's fantastic in pretty much everything I've seen her in. Julia Stiles was a surprise to see her playing sort of this subdued role. It was
At this point in time,
fun
when
to
you
see
see
her.
Julia Stiles in a movie, it's sort of a surprise, which is a shame.
Yeah, and like I knew that the main four, Jennifer Lopez, Constance Wu, Lily Reinhart, and Kiki Palmer, all of them have another reason to have like a spotlight on them. And so all of them coming together to do this sort of team almost the director talked about wanting Martin Scorsese or a director who had handled a movie like this to do this before taking the job herself. And I really, really enjoyed this. This did feel like a Goodfellas or something, like a Casino, like something along the lines of that. I was impressed by like music choices. I was actually honestly kind of like overwhelmed. This is the kind of movie that gets made that I think like the dedication and vision behind it is something that requires a level of commitment and organization that I just like honestly gives me a little bit of anxiety. But yeah, Jennifer Lopez knocked it off the map. She was incredible, and she did a lot of work physically to be able to pull off the dance sequences and to be able to just perform and pull all this off and make it look natural and all that. And everybody did such a good job, such like a genuine, real, honest, believable like story. And I just it was I don't know. I really enjoyed it.
Well, so that was my pick, kind of a more serious. Eric
Yeah.
also went with a more serious pick, but reached in the Wayback Machine. Hard to believe this movie is almost 23 years old now.
Uh,
Eric went with The Cell, which came out in 2000. So I'll let you lead off. What drew you to The Cell?
well, the opposite of real and honest and believable. No, Tarsem Singh his visual style. There's this excellent movie that he made called The Fall that friends recommend to me, and he made The Immortals with Henry Cavill way back, and he just has a very distinctive eye for surreal visuals. And again, it's sort of that idea of you have an image in your head and a vision, and you're going to do what you can to translate that. I don't know why you would make the choices to frame an image with like vine growth, and then to go the extra step to digitally animate that so that it's living. But I'm not Tarsem Singh, and it's that level of vision and control and incredible performances from Jennifer Lopez, Vince Vaughn, and Vincent D'Onofrio. I mean, this is a movie about a sci-fi take on therapeutic intervention, where Jennifer Lopez's character is assigned to someone who enters the headspace of people who are either in a coma or otherwise psychologically unavailable. And she goes into the mind of a serial killer played by Vincent D'Onofrio in order to learn information about where his possible last victim is currently located, because he's, for one reason or another, unable to respond, and they're unable to get that information from him. So it's this surreal auteuristic take on the mind of a serial killer, and that grandiose self-serving, like, there, I really was thinking of like the William Blake art with the Lucifer with the giant spread wings and things. It is this icon of Vincent D'Onofrio walking down with these metal links on his back tied to this massive fabric, and it's so operatic and over the top. And I don't know what it is that this is a movie that is on a lot of people's underrated lists, and I see why. Because if this came out with it like 91 was Silence of the Lambs.
Yeah.
So 9 years later, you're looking at something like Hannibal Lecter, all the way to something in the mindset of like what's going on with Vincent D'Onofrio. And I can see someone trying to draw parallels and show someone trying to escalate this. And I don't know what would have put people off other than seeing Jennifer Lopez, thinking there's going to be some kind of romantic comedy, something. Oh, Vince Vaughn, like, okay, whatever. And then just going in and be like, what the hell did I just watch? So yeah.
Yeah, and I think I mentioned in the pre-show when we were talking about this, I feel like this movie might have just been a little bit ahead of its time, because the kind of area that explores and the freedoms that it takes, you see this a lot more commonly in movies now today. The fact that you're going into somebody's mind basically allows them a little bit of carte blanche to detach from something being grounded in reality, and you get these expansive and wildly creative and fantastic visuals. This was Singh's first feature film after doing a ton of music videos, which is a space which is often disconnected from a linear kind of storytelling where you're looking at these kind of fantastic visuals. And that's what I remember hitting for me the most in this movie, was kind of the visual style and the striking use of color and costuming and things like that. And I thought Jennifer Lopez does a good job. We will flash, I forgot the image there, the one that I found to pull, one of her interesting looks from the film. See, staring out at that. But I also wonder if, you're talking about this movie was fronted by Jennifer Lopez, who's kind of a pop star at that point in time, had done Out of Sight and some of these other movies, and Vince Vaughn, who most people had known from Swingers at that point in time. And you're probably like, hey, this can be this is not a comedy. And so both of them, kudos to them for stretching their range. Vincent D'Onofrio is great in a whole variety of weird and dramatic roles, so wouldn't that just surprising for him. But I think that's one of the reasons this movie ends up on a lot of underrated lists, because people either saw the trailer and were like, I don't get this, and stayed away, or went expecting something else. We see that quite a lot. People go with a certain conception of a movie. We just saw this, I think, with Babylon. A lot of people went and thought, oh, it's the guy that made La La Land. I'm going to see La La Land Part 2. And halfway through the opening orgy scene, they're like, this is not what I was hoping to see. I think that happened a lot for some of the people with The Cell. I kind of remember that a little bit at the time, and it's a movie I think it's worth revisiting, especially just to appreciate the cinematic style and the visuals, the use of color, all of the production design elements that really have stood the test of time here. Any other things to add about our Jennifer Lopez selections?
I got to see more of Jennifer Lopez this week than I have in the last 30 years of mine on this earth, and she's fantastic.
She's got a lot of range that I don't think people fully appreciate.
Yeah, I really want to watch this one of hers called Enough. It's supposed to be about domestic abuse, but it's something I've had recommended to me multiple times, and she's just, I don't know, she's fantastic. I know it's like one of those late to the party kind of things where the world knows already, but it's like, hey, wow.
Well, this week we got a new release that helped us put the focus on Jennifer Lopez. Next week it'll be a new release that puts the focus on another interesting filmmaker, and that's M. Night Shyamalan. We will be looking at Knock at the Cabin, which opens in theaters on Friday, but we will also each be bringing a couple of our favorite M. Night Shyamalan stories, so that's something to look out for next week. Until then, any parting thoughts?
Thank you all. We'll see you at the movies.
Yes, guys, have a great week and enjoy all the